game time.
Hey everybody, Complementarian here. I wanted to share with you guys another awesome picture in the Bible that we get. It comes in Exodus. Yeah, I finished Genesis. Awesome book, by the way. I think I said that last time. But in Exodus, so the next book, because they're pretty much one book, and in the Greek they were one book, but that's for another story. But in the first or third chapter of Exodus, Moses has already gotten out of Egypt because, of what he did. And then he's in Egypt for 40 years, and one day he's walking along, he's on his own path, walking along, and he sees this burning bush. And he's like, that's weird, because the bush isn't like burning up. It's not being consumed by the fire, it's just burning. Nuts. And he's on this mountain when he's herding sheep, and he sees this bush, and he says out loud, he says, "Now I will turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn." And then it goes on, it says, verse 4, so 3:4, "So when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, 'Moses, Moses.' And he said, 'Here I am.'" But notice what happened here. Moses is on his own path, his own path, and his eyesight, his sight, his direction, his focus is diverted toward that of God. And it's only when he makes a conscious decision out loud and says, "I will now turn aside. I will move out of the direction that I'm currently heading in into a different direction," and when God recognized that, he did move away, right? And so when God saw that he turned aside, that he had turned from his own direction to direction towards this side of God, that God chose to speak to him, to begin this relationship, what we later on know as the Ten Commandments story. He begins this relationship only when Moses had turned away from his own path, which is what got him in the middle of the desert in the first place, around stinky, nasty sheep. He was okay in that situation, but it was not his truly intended purpose. It is not what God had planned for him. The first 40 years of his life, first 21 years when he was raised in Egypt, in order for the later, basically 80 years of his life, for the later half of his life, from his 40 to 80-year-old mark, when he decides to go back into Egypt to do what God had called him to do. It wasn't his true purpose, but God could not reveal that to them, could not do that until Moses had turned aside. And the same is true of us. God is knocking at the door of all of our hearts. That's what he says. And he wants to come in, but it's only until we open the door that God can do with us and start to rearrange the furniture, metaphorical furniture of our household, can start to rearrange our life to fulfill the purpose that he gave to us. Like in Psalms 139, "I knit you together in your mother's womb. I know your days before they were yet one." Jeremiah 29:11. Right? "For many other plans I know that I have for you, to prosper you. Many other plans I know I have for you, are to prosper you, not to harm you." But it only happens when we make that conscious decision to turn aside. And having this conversation this last week with several different employees about how Christianity is different than the other faith religion, because it's the only one that I have to accept that I'm wrong, and it's the only one that is not works-based faith. The only requirement that we have is to accept that free gift of grace. But it's not until we accept it that God can do with us the purpose, the desire that he has for us. Now let me correct myself. The desire that he has for us, the intended plan and purpose that he has for you, his beautiful creation. This may stir up a lot of questions, but this is it in a nutshell. I can't get into all the theology behind it. There she is again, the star of our vlogs. Beep. She always has to make an appearance. So that's all I got for you guys today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you know where to put them. I love you guys. Hasta luego, mis amigos.